says Taylor Ursula, Professor Pisces. You have a very Neptunian Pisces corresponding to explore. Oh man, Pisces. Okay, so this Pisces first quarter moon is taking place at 27 degrees on Tuesday, December the 19th. Now, you may recognize that this moon is technically out of orb of Saturn. It is co-present with Saturn, absolutely. But at 27 degrees, it is meeting the sun in a square far, far away from Saturn at 2 degrees. So this might be a nice shift out of finally this sort of mutable axis chaos that has been everything encountering Saturn. This means that the sun is also at 27 degrees of Sagittarius, and that means it's wrapping up its time in that sign. It is getting a sense of what has started at the new moon the week prior and getting clear on what we're wrapping up here in this particularly fiery sector of the zodiac. Let's break down the aspects. On Sunday, the 17th, we have the moon enter Pisces and pretty immediately meet with Saturn. So not necessarily the same as the squares we've been encountering from Sagittarius, more the sort of meeting the inevitability of Saturn saying, okay, whatever it is that you are trying to build here, whatever it is you're trying to experience and connect with, needs to consider the long-term implications, needs to consider what is needed for a foundation to allow this idea to grow and sustain. And it needs to consider perhaps the community, right? Pisces is a collective sign. We talked about that last week at the new moon. So Pisces is a sign that is all of us being connected, even across the globe, right? And so there need to be considerations made in that sense as well. The moon then goes on to sextile Jupiter, currently retrograde in Taurus at 5 degrees, and then Mercury, currently retrograde in Capricorn at 6 degrees. So we're getting a lot of grounding, right? These are both earth signs. These are the first earth sign and the last earth sign. There's something nice about that. There's something very Piscean about that, thinking about the beginning and the end. And there's, again, something grounded here in these connections to these planets. They're both retrograde, right? And they'll both station around the same time. Jupiter is going to station direct on the 30th, right before New Year's Eve, and Mercury will station direct on New Year's Day, so just 2 days apart. So the moon being able to connect to these two planets back to back in this sense highlights the fact that we are spending this time in consideration, right? These planets being retrograde means we don't have the answers yet. We're still gathering that information. We're still retracing those steps in that way. But there is something being built into that consideration based off of what Saturn's given us just beforehand. I want to think about the long term. I want to think about the collective. I want to think about the connection that we all share. Okay, let me ground this into these two earth signs, the beginning and the end, and let me sort of allow those two planets that are currently retrograde to weave that into what they're exploring in those respective retrograde placements. And then on Monday, the 18th, we have Mercury and Jupiter make their trine from these two earth signs. Now, Mercury first made this trine while still direct on December 7th, just a couple weeks before this lunation. So we're now circling back and getting a sense of what that opening trine was revealing to us, is further connected to, and might be informed by this conversation to the moon that it's just had, or that they've both just had, really. So there's a lot being made sense of at this time. There's a lot that we're circling back to. There's a lot that we are starting to kind of piece together and also begin to expand, kind of like a puzzle. We're seeing the pieces fit together. We're starting to see what the picture is starting to look like, and we're recognizing that it's starting to match the box. Okay, so we're getting some things in order here. And Mercury is about our on-the-ground thinking, our sort of analytical thinking, and Jupiter is about our more philosophical thinking, our big picture perspective. So it's really lovely to have these planets in conversation, now both retrograde, and giving us expansion in our day-to-day world and also more analytical progress in our philosophical world. I hope that made sense. Later on Monday, we have the moon in Pisces make a trine to Venus in Scorpio. And we know Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, but exalted in Pisces. So there's a little bit of sweetness that the moon is able to provide to Venus here, even though Scorpio is also the sign of the moon's fall. So it's a little bit of hey, I got you this, but don't give me that. The moon then also squares Mars at 17 degrees. So Mars is all up in everything we're doing lately. So this might mean that even though we make a nice connection to Venus, we are also having our emotions, I don't know, feeling frayed, feeling like our emotions are not able to connect with our actions, and that feeling frustrating, feeling like our feelings are being met with anger or aggressiveness, and that's not a very good feeling either. So there's some sort of discord happening here. Let's remember that this is a first quarter moon, which means the moon is also going to square the sun. So that pressure isn't all bad. That pressure is connected to our expectations, what we want to see happening as a result of what we've started at the new moon. So that pressure isn't necessarily itself a negative thing, but Mars is certainly ramping up the desire to be meeting those expectations. On Tuesday, the moon merges with Neptune at 24 degrees. We might be pulled into a place of dissociation if our feelings are being met with aggression or anger through Mars. We might feel some sort of old habitual, like, coping mechanisms come up where we don't really know what to do, and we sort of withdraw into whatever that means to you. That as a word, you tell me what that word is, okay? There may be a need to just fully shift into compassion. That's one of the more positive connotations of Neptune. We might have some sort of anger rising within us about our own feelings, about not living up to our own expectations, about not being able to make things happen the way we desire through Mars. And we may need to shift into a place of surrendering to what is and just allowing ourselves to be compassionate with ourselves in that moment. Maybe that compassion needs to be for the person who is responding angrily to our emotions. There's a lot of different ways this can play out, but do know that there is some sort of disconnect or discord that's happening through Mars, and Neptune shows how we may be reacting or responding to that. Again, the spectrum of Neptune is like, I need to dissolve immediately. I can't be here for this sense of rejection, and I may escape in some way, or I'm going to fully like rise above this, transcend what's happening here, and just try to see the big picture and give every part of it a bit of the benefit of the doubt, a bit of compassion. The moon then squares the sun at 27 degrees of Sagittarius and goes on to make a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees. So the pressure ramps up when the sun meets the moon. This is when we are recognizing whatever is standing in our way or whatever is not coming together the way that we hoped. Whatever that pressure is about becomes obvious here. And that sextile to Pluto helps us process, right? Pluto's at 29 degrees right now. Let's keep in mind that Pluto will be back here next fall. So we are wrapping up that Capricorn story, and that Pluto energy is allowing us to, again, at 29 degrees, really like teeter on the edge of the zodiac, right? 29 degrees of Pisces is the edge of it all. My moon is here. Hello. So there's something where we're able to really fully zoom out, see everything, as overwhelming as that may be, as just like mind-blowing as that may feel. There is some possibility to zoom out and see some grand scheme of things, some really expansive perspective. And Pluto assists with the integration of whatever's happening here. Pluto's allowing us to get a deeper sense of where this is triggering within us, where this is pointing our attention to something old and ancient within us. Pisces is like the primordial ooze. So there may be something like truly fundamental in there that is being brought to the surface that Pluto's helping us to become clear on and find a way to move through. A couple notable events taking place after this lunation. This first quarter moon happens on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the 20th, we have Venus in Scorpio opposing Uranus in Taurus. Now, this is significant in itself because Venus is ruling Uranus, and Venus-Uranus transits tend to disrupt how we connect with people. This may be painful. We had a lot of these oppositions show up in Scorpio season itself, when the sun moved through, Mercury moved through, Mars moved through, all opposing Uranus. A lot of disruption was brought into our social sphere. A lot of disruption was brought into the global sphere. So we're seeing Venus now come through and kind of finish up these conversations because there's no major other body that's going to move through Scorpio now. This is it. So Venus is really wrapping up this conversation while ruling Uranus. And this may be significant because we need to remember the chain of command here that we established in the Sagittarius season video, as well as last week's Sagittarius new moon video, which is that Venus is in Scorpio being ruled by Mars. Mars is in Sagittarius being ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus being ruled by Venus. And this first quarter moon in Pisces is also being ruled by Jupiter. So everything here right now is coming under the kind of rule of Venus here in the opposition to Uranus, but also to Jupiter, who's hanging out in Taurus with Uranus. There's a whole, I told you, it's a lot. It's a lot. So whatever this Venus-Uranus opposition is bringing up for us, let's remember that Venus was all up in the squares to Uranus during its retrograde in Leo over the summer. So there may be something from that time too that is sort of manifesting in a different way, moving from the square to the opposition, right? And again, this being that last conversation from that opposition to Uranus may be like the other shoe falling or something of that nature. And that energy is all showing up in this first quarter moon. So again, the expectations that we have, the hopes and dreams that we are carrying, our ability or inability to move toward those things, other people's reactions to what we are moving toward right now. There's a lot of possibility that is going to be kind of like made unstable at this moon. And the last notes about this moon, the next day, Thursday, the 21st? Yes. We see Mercury retrograde move into that sextile to Saturn that we had happen on the 2nd, which we also talked about last week at the new moon, since the moon was moving into that sextile as well. So we are now revisiting those themes. We are now maybe re-strategizing or getting clear on what we want to be built into our long term, maybe even despite the disruptions that we are experiencing in our interpersonal relationships. And when I mention clarity, I do so specifically because Thursday is also the solstice, where the sun will be moving into Capricorn, and we'll be moving toward that cazimi happening right there at 0 degrees when Mercury backs its way into it just a day later. So that means the sun will be soon moving into that sextile to Saturn as well, and we'll be becoming more conscious of what those maybe changes are that we're making, what these adjustments are that we're making to be focusing on something long-term and collective. Okay, let's go ahead and pull some cards. We will do a recap of what we opened up at the Sagittarius new moon, and we'll see how these themes are expanding here at this first quarter moon. See you there. Okay, so here we have our Sagittarius new moon cards laid out. And if you missed this video, go ahead, take a second, check it out now, and meet us back here and we'll pull for our Pisces first quarter moon. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so as always, you can check out the description of this video and download the free Moon Phase Tarot Pull PDF, and you can pull along with us. All right, so for this first quarter moon, we are looking at energy that is accumulating now. So whatever was initiated at that new moon we are now seeing what is beginning to build up. We're looking at doubts and complications that arise with this energy. We're asking about gifts that we can access through this energy now. And lastly, lessons that we can make sense of as we approach the full moon. We can't make sense of everything. Not everything makes sense, but we can make sense of some things, and we'll figure out what that looks like here today. All right. I think one more. Yeah, that feels good. Okay. So, looking at energy that is accumulating now. Okay, we have the King of Swords. Funny to see the King of Swords when we're talking so much about Neptune and the idea that Neptune is kind of defying the idea of a singular truth. But this may represent rather the process of us finding our own sense of self-knowing, finding a sense of sort of mental containment, right? Kind of coming into a place of mastering the mind, if you will. And that certainly speaks to some of what we've talked about in terms of grounding, those trines, those sextiles between the moon and Jupiter and Mercury, and then the trine between Mercury and Jupiter, right? We're sort of grounding ourselves and getting a sense of what is real and what is possible in this moment. We might be steeling ourselves in the face of the different versions of the story that are going around now with Neptune involved so heavily. We might be conflicted about or like sort of inundated with different versions of the truth, or maybe like different iterations of the information. And ultimately it's up to us to kind of formalize what we are sure of at this time, to master what is in front of us, to conquer any sense of doubt that we're having. And this is not about necessarily narrowing down a singular truth, but it is about feeling like we are in mastery with how we are processing information at this moment, right? So we are kind of being tested a little bit with that Neptune energy. And we're ultimately trying to come to a place where we feel grounded in what we know in a way that we can demonstrate visibly outward to others. I'm able to remain calm in the face of these cloudy skies, and I'm able to find my own clarity. It's not an accident that's designed that way. Maybe we are questioning what this process looks like for ourselves. We're turning within to assess where we might be out of like connection with our ability to do this, where we're feeling a bit frayed. Maybe we're stepping out of the role of being an arbiter of truth in some way, and we are instead turning inward to determine what the next externalization of this looks like for ourselves. Doubts and complications that arise with this energy. Here's some Sag energy for us. How much longer do I have to endure this? How far does my current mastery take me at this time? Am I able to keep going, right? And these moon phases are kind of unfolding across different seasons. So we know that we're still in Sagittarius season. We're about to embrace the solstice and step into Capricorn season, where we will be called to initiate something. And yet on that very first day of Capricorn season, we'll have that Mercury cazimi where we're getting a sense of how much farther we need to go, or we're getting a sense of what else needs to be done. So we're not getting like a fresh start with the beginning of Capricorn season. We're more getting the fresh start at the new year, which kind of feels more aligned with the calendar. So at the top of Capricorn season, we're really starting to get a sense of, oh, all right, I'm seeing like where what areas need my attention, and this is how much farther I need to keep going in order to get to the root of this, in order to get to this place of mastery. I'm recognizing that I'm on a long haul, and I need to, I'm worried that I don't have the tools or the resources, or like I always say, the snacks to like get this road trip, get to our destination. There's a tiny little vehicle here on this cosmic road, and you can get a sense that this car is like halfway along its journey. There's still all these curves to go, and so this is a journey of passion. We aren't stopping because we are driven by something. So maybe we're questioning, do I have that drive right now? Do I have that motivation? Do I need to just pull over this vehicle and grab some extra snacks and maybe like fill up on gas? I'm not sure that I have what it takes to get to this place. Maybe we're feeling like there's so much information. There are so many gray skies right now. There's so much Neptunian energy. I don't know if I can keep driving through it. I don't know if I can keep going like this. So we're uncertain. Gifts that we can access through this energy. Well, we have another 9. And I'm kind of thinking about these as like the Jupiterian sides here. We've got like the Sag side and the Pisces side. Gifts are making a wish. Oof, like maybe this is really daunting. Maybe we are worried about making it to our destination, but we have to believe and have faith in something at this time, right? I think that's the very Jupiterian takeaway from this moment. We are, again, in the global landscape, like in a time of real uncertainty. How much longer are we going to keep enduring what we're enduring? But we do have to keep hoping and keep putting those hopes into the world. We do have to be open to possibility. And the Cups rather, is a really beautiful gift. And I love that that is the gift that is showing up. Because in the 8, we've walked away from something painful that was no longer, well, it wasn't painful itself, but maybe it was painful to acknowledge that it wasn't fulfilling us. It was painful to walk away because we had invested so much in it. And by making that sacrifice, we arrive at a place where we are able to open our hearts to a lot of new possibilities. And through this, we make it to the 10, where we're able to connect with others and celebrate what we are able to share. So a gift that we can access is the possibility of possibility, the insistence on hope, the very Piscean nature of, but I believe that we can get through this. Even if it's just my optimism right now driving this hope, I have it, I'm connected to it, and I can access my hope at this time. Even if we flip this, we're maybe thinking about like, do I even dare to wish, right? Maybe it feels dangerous to wish because we've had our hearts broken before. We know the Suit of Cups to be about heartbreak and emerging from heartbreak and moving forward. And so maybe there's a pausing here to get clear on like, where is my sense of faith right now? What do I need to offer it? What do I need to like bolster it at this time? What would that look like? Lessons that we can make sense of as we approach the full moon. Oh, so we're looking at belief on a broader scale. Absolutely. And this is where Jupiter being in Taurus is really beautiful and connecting us to this broader reading, right? This is a very Piscean card, having hope against all odds, believing in a higher power, believing that change is possible, believing that the vision that we carry within us can be made real somehow, some way. And lessons we can make sense of are, this is Taurus, right? So I'm thinking about the trine from Mercury to Jupiter in Taurus, about the sextile from the moon to both these planets, right? And thinking about grounding. Like this mountain here is something that we trust because we've stood on it before. And that's what Taurus is. Taurus is, I trust what I have experienced. I trust what I have felt with my fingertips, what I have felt through my feet on the ground, what I have felt in a tangible way. I have touched my resources and I therefore trust that I have them, right? It's very tactile. It's very like faith oriented in a very grounded, like traditional earthy sense. So what I mean by that is maybe rooting into what sort of traditions you can call upon to help you anchor and ground and endure at this time. What sort of belief system you can begin to tap into in order to help bolster yourself now. What are we believing in? And if we reverse this, we can get clear on, okay, where am I maybe in search of a mentor to help me? What do I have maybe to teach or offer? Where am I feeling out of touch with, out of connection with my sense of belief and faith now? And what can I do to align myself with something bigger? That's a really big part of the Hierophant, is that we are seeking something outside of ourselves. Again, whether it's that we are offering wisdom to others or receiving wisdom from another, or both. I love to think about this being fluid and this being like a cycle, an exchange. It's very community oriented, right? Paying forward what we learn from someone else. And so this is what we can make sense of. Lessons. We're coming across lessons of faith, lessons of belief systems, right? And getting clear on where we stand with those right now as it connects to the rest of this spread. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like, please share, please subscribe. Next week, we'll talk about our Cancer full moon. It will be trine to Saturn. So we'll start moving out of those squares into more flowing trines and maybe finding ways to work with this energy a bit more gently moving forward. So I hope to see you there.